In this video, I'm going to give my review and recommendation on CS484 Parallel Programming, a course offered in the Illinois MCS program. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first video with me, my name is Will. I'm an engineering manager and online computer science master's student on the Illinois MCS program. And in this channel, I teach my lessons learned through online learning and also professional development as a software developer. Today, I will share my personal opinions and experiences taking CS484 Parallel Programming, and I will timestamp everything so you can jump around as needed. So to start, where does this course fit and what is needed to start the course? CS484 qualifies as a 4-credit breadth course as the only course available in the parallel computing core area. The nice thing about this course is that there are no course prerequisites. Although I do agree that there are no course prerequisites per se, if there's one thing that I would have wanted to know before I took the course is to just brush up on my C++, just some of the basics, but for sure, remember how to use pointers. That's probably the number one thing I saw most people say that they tripped on in the programming assignments, including myself, is just doing incorrect things with pointers and wasting hours on hours because you had one thing wrong and then you change one character or one line in your program and then everything just starts working. So C++ and pointers are important. Another thing with this class is you don't need a textbook. You don't use one at all in the class. There's not even recommended textbooks. Everything is through online resources and basic coding practices and specifications for the programming methodologies that we'll use in the class is all that's needed. Okay, so what's covered in CS484? Well, the main scope of the course is to learn how to write computer programs to make the most of modern parallel computers so that the programs achieve peak levels of performance the underlying hardware can provide. At the beginning of the course, you will learn some of the fundamentals of chip architectures and how they improved over time and how they increase computing performance. You will then start to learn how caching is leveraged to further improve program performance via spatial and temporal locality. Once you have the theoretical foundation, you will start exploring various programming systems and methodologies to enhance programming performance. You'll first learn OpenMP, which is a multi-platform shared memory programming language in C, C++, and Fortran. Next, you'll briefly touch on pthreads and C++11 atomics for distributed memory programming. You then will get into what I believe is the meat of the course, MPI, short for Message Passing Protocol, which is the communication protocol used for programming parallel computers. To round out the course, you will learn about hybrid programming, say when you put OpenMP and MPI together, parallel algorithms such as sorting, and lastly, interconnected topologies and fault tolerance. Okay, so now that we know what the course covers, what is the time commitment? Well, CS484 is a very demanding course with a lot of deliverables. Like all Coursera and MCS courses, you have weekly lectures and content quizzes that take about a couple hours. You have to complete 4 machine problems, basically programming assignments are spread out through the whole semester. The first one is an absolute layup. It takes about an hour and a half to do. It's just getting you used to how to use the virtual environment that you'll be programming on for the University of Illinois and how to submit jobs to the campus cluster. The other 3, on the other hand, though, those are pretty heavy. I mean, I've spent, I think on the longest one, about 20 plus hours, but on average, you could probably expect to spend 8 to 15 hours. They kind of grow in difficulty over time. So that's where the meat of the class is in these 4 assignments. To pair with the programming assignments, there's just 4 written homework assignments. These also range in difficulty, but I would expect to spend a couple hours on those as well. At the end of the course, there's a final project that kind of ties into all the other 4 programming assignments you did previously. While it is considered larger programming assignment by the syllabus, it's actually kind of on par with the other ones. It builds off a lot of things you built in previous programming assignments, so you're not starting from ground zero, which is nice. So gives you a good foundation, and I think it took me about 10 hours. So although it is slated as a larger project, it's actually not terrible because it's building off a lot of things you learned. Finally, CS484 has 2 proctored exams, one midterm and one final. These are actually worth 40% of the entire grade, so you need to spend a lot of time studying for these. So I would expect during the middle of the semester and the end of the semester, you're gonna have to allocate, say 10 hours just to study for both of those. So on top of the other parts of the class, there's a lot of things that you need to manage. So what did I like about CS484? Well, as a .NET developer who hasn't done a lot of parallel programming, about the most parallel things I've done is basically slap a parallel 4 onto a loop and then let Microsoft take the wheel and apply their parallel magic. Learning the fundamentals of parallel computing and the underlying hardware architectures, since I didn't have a lot of experience with it, was quite interesting to me, so that was one big thing I liked about the course. Probably the biggest pro of the course is the teaching staff. Obviously this will change over time because a lot of it hinges on the quality of the TA, but when I was taking it, the TAs were awesome. Unless you're a C++ master or a parallel programming wizard, you'll probably find yourself in the scheduled office hours with either a TA or the professor. The programming assignments are pretty difficult, and you likely will find yourself going in there asking questions. The TAs and the professor do a good job at breaking down the problems into smaller portions, and then kind of get you in the right direction, but not enough where they give away all the answers, so it undermines your learning. So going to those were really helpful and probably a big pro of the program. The last thing I liked was, although it was a very demanding course, a lot is expected from you, everything was put together really well, and you end up just learning a ton. And you'll maintain that knowledge as well, because you just have to, it gets beat into you by doing the programming assignments. Also, another plus I'm going to add on to this is that the grading scale is actually pretty favorable. I think it's 85% for an A, and then there's a pretty nice curve that's applied. So I wouldn't stress too much about getting over 90% on assignments, because the scale and also the curve that gets applied at the end is pretty reasonable. Okay, so what didn't I like about the course? Well, there's a ton that's expected of you. It's a very, very backload course. In that last month, you'll find yourself doing the last programming assignment, probably a homework assignment, the final project, and then studying for that final. So there's just a ton of work, especially at the end. And if you're taking with another course, you're gonna be pulling your hair out. I don't have any hair, but you know what I mean. So the second thing I didn't like is how much weight was put on the two proctored exams, the midterm and the final. Like I mentioned before, it's 40% of your grade, which I think is pretty ridiculous for a class that has so many programming assignments, which I think are actually a better measure of mastery of the course content than just regurgitating information on a final or a midterm. Now there's not a ton of things I didn't like about the course, so this is kind of a nitpicky one, but at times the VM farm or the campus cluster were kind of finicky, or there's a technical issue, or someone in the class kept submitting jobs that would never get out of their loop, so it would just eat all the resources. Like I think there's one time some guy had something running for like 36 hours and no one could submit any jobs. But for the most part, the people that were supporting those platforms were really on top of things. Maintenance didn't take you down too long, so it's just kind of a minor annoyance, but it did happen time to time. So what are my final thoughts on CS484? Well, although I'm just basically a .NET desktop developer for internal applications, so I'll probably never be doing much high performance computing using parallel programming. I think the concepts taught in this class are very useful for any developer of any skill level. Understanding concepts like caching, thread safety, and the basics of parallel programming are very useful skills for all developers. It can alter even how you think about going about your programming for just work in general or other assignments or projects. So I think just understanding those underlying concepts are very useful to your career as a developer. CS484 was probably one of the most difficult classes I've ever taken, including the other master's program I've done in quantitative finance, which was pretty heavy. And also I did undergrad in electrical engineering. So it's definitely up there in one of the more difficult classes, but it was put together really well, and there's a good blend between theory and practice. So I think it's actually a really good course for anyone to take that wants to kind of be a serious developer and understand concepts that I think are important for everyone to understand, which is parallel computing and the underlying architectures of the computer. So I would definitely recommend the course, but I'd add one caveat is I would avoid trying to take this with another class. I took it with CS411, the database systems class, and that was a humongous mistake. They're both very demanding classes, so I don't think I had a free hour for about 3 months. So that's one thing I would keep in mind is it's very demanding, well worth it, but if you can, just maybe take it by itself. So if you found this interesting and you want to learn more about the courses offered in the Illinois MCS program, I have a short playlist that you can watch that has all my reviews of all the classes I've taken. Click on that, see you in there.